Today we are going to speak about my most favorite manga series of all time. In fact, this manga made me buy 14 full books with the intention of one day giving them to my unborn children. We are going to talk about Berserk. Our story begins with Guts, known as the Black Swordsman. He's a mercenary wandering through a medieval and dark world. And he's armed with, and I quote, a slab of iron, for which the term sword would be inappropriate. This weapon serves him while hunting down apostles, demons that were once human. From here the narrative flashes back into Guts' childhood. Born from the corpse of his dead mother, he's adopted by a group of mercenaries. From a young age he learns to fight for his life, and this brutal upbringing leads him to become a mercenary himself. He kills not only for money, but also to survive. And for a while he walks alone, until one day he encounters Griffith and his group of mercenaries called the Band of the Hawk. Sorry, I just couldn't resist. After he loses a duel with Griffith, he is then forced to become a member of the Band of the Hawk. The bond between Guts and Griffith deepens as they ride together into countless victories. At the same time, and without even realizing it at first, Guts begins to feel something for Casca, who is the only female warrior within the Band of the Hawk. However, he begins to question his purpose in life, so he finally decides to leave the Band of the Hawk and search his own path. Meanwhile, Griffith is unable to cope with Guts' departure. He's losing control and makes a rash decision, which ultimately leads to his imprisonment. Before we dive deeper, I'd like to recommend a great place where you can buy Berserk and other manga and comics. Walt's Comic Shop. Not only do they have the deluxe editions of Berserk, but also great pre-order deals, limited editions, bargain bins and huge discounts. For your first time order above 40 euros, you can get free shipping with the code COSMICCOMICCORNER.
There's something for everyone.
Now let's go back into the world of Berserk. The Eclipse. Griffith's ambitions are shattered after his imprisonment. He lost the Band of the Hawk and his body is completely broken. So after he has been liberated by Guts, Casca and the remains of the Band of the Hawk, the God Hand offers him a place among their ranks. In exchange for sacrificing all of his friends, he finally agrees and every member of the Band of the Hawk who is there is being slaughtered. The only two survivors of the bloodshed are Guts and Casca. They have been saved by the sudden appearance of the mysterious Skull Knight. Guts loses an arm and an eye, while Casca's spirit is completely broken by the horrors she witnessed. Guts embarks on a quest for revenge against Griffith and the God Hand. He becomes the Black Swordsman. And that is where we jump back to where the story originally started, with the Black Swordsman hunting down apostles. Guts is driven by rage, hatred and his lust for revenge. The Conviction Arc. From here the story gains traction with Guts continuing his journey, but his quest is not only revenge, but also looking out for the now mentally incapacitated Casca. He has now to battle the demonic forces of the Holy See, a corrupt and religious sect who regards Guts as a heretic. And even though he prefers to be alone, he gathers a fellowship around him, which more often than not helps him to stand against the most impossible odds. Among his new friends is a wind spirit called Puck. This elvish creature comes from the island Skellig, which becomes the destination for the group. They hope that the elves can provide a cure for Casca's mind. But let's talk about his fellowship here for a second. Bernice is originally a member of the Holy See, and she's also a noblewoman. But after her encounter with Guts, her belief shatters, and she finally decides to follow him, while slowly evolving a crush on him. At the same time, she becomes the caretaker of Casca. Serpico, who's kind of related to Berenice, and his reason to follow the group is simply to look after her. After a duel with Guts, his life is spared by him, and in time Serpico becomes an important member of the group. Isidro left home and family to become a swordsman. After his life is saved by Guts, he wants to follow him and learn from him. Just like Puck, Isidro becomes something like the comic relief of the series. Nonetheless, he plays an important part within the group as well. The Millennium Falcon arc. The reborn version of Griffith starts to rebuild the Band of the Hawk anew, but this time with supernaturally empowered members. He begins to fulfill his dream of ruling a kingdom. Meanwhile, Guts and his companions continue their journey. They arrive at a place called the Mansion of the Spirit Tree, which is located in an enchanted forest. They are introduced to Flora and her apprentice Shirke. Guts receives the Berserker armor, which grants him great superhuman powers for the price of his humanity and his control. If it wasn't for Shirke's ability to connect with his mind, Guts would be entirely devoured by the armor. So from there, Shirke becomes part of the group as well. She leaves the mansion of the Spirit Tree to accompany the group to Skellig. The Fantasia arc. The boundaries between the astral and the physical realm begin to blur, and the world is increasingly engulfed by supernatural forces. The group finally makes it to Skellig, the island where Alfhelm is located. With great effort and some of the greatest chapters within the story, they are finally able to repair Casca's mind. But even though they can restore Casca's sanity, her memories of the eclipse cause her great pain. This creates a rift between her and Guts. In the manga we've got a few pages to go, but I'll just leave it at that. One of the last pages Miura could ever finish before his death was within this arc. It's always sad when an author dies before his work is finished. But to be completely honest with you, I would be absolutely satisfied if the story ended here with his last page ever. Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk, died in 2021. Subsequently, a life ends, and I think it can be the same with this story, because at some point it simply ends. It's a reflection of life itself, because at some point the clock just stops. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that Kojiro Mori, one of Miura's closest friends, will continue the story. And I'm excited for every new page that arrives. The story has accompanied my own life for almost 2 decades now, and if it will be there for another decade, I'm thankful for it. It does not happen very often that you've got a story that matures with you. At its core, Berserk tells a tale of humans fighting against impossible odds until their last breath. That's certainly why so many people out there can relate to Guts and his journey. No matter what, he simply refuses to give up. Guts searching for his purpose in life brings us closer to existential philosophy. His introspections are reminiscent of our own struggles. The deeper you dive into the story, it becomes clear that Berserk is not only there for mere entertainment. Books that are written for entertainment only will never make you reflect about your own philosophies. It can even make you question your own purpose in life and ultimately lead to a change of perspective. But let's talk about the fantastical elements of the story as well. I mean, we still are in a dark fantasy world, so let's talk about the God Hand. At the end of the Golden Age arc, the part of the story that leads up to the eclipse, we are introduced to the God Hand. A dark force that has quite some similarities to Clive Barker's vision of the Cenobites. You may have read of them in the book The Hellbound Heart, or you may have seen them in the Hellraiser movies. Both the God Hand and the Cenobites are portrayed as otherworldly beings. They wield extreme power and embody the extremes of human suffering and temptation. The God Hand are demonic entities. They exist to maintain a cosmic order. And they are driven by human sacrifice and despair. The Cenobites are sadomasochistic creatures from another dimension. They are here to explore the limitations of physical sensations. Each group is summoned by specific rituals. The God Hand is summoned by the Behelit, a mysterious artifact. The Cenobites are summoned by a puzzle configuration, which opens the gateway to their dimension. Both groups are shrouded in moral ambiguity. The God Hand, while malevolent, seems to merely enforce a preordained cosmic order. And the Cenobites do not regard themselves as evil. They see themselves simply as explorers of the human condition, indifferent to the suffering they inflict. They believe they are providing enlightenment. What they both have in common is the theme of human desire and its corrupting influence. The God Hand is formed from individuals who, in the moment of their ultimate despair, sacrificed others to fulfill their ambitions, thus becoming part of a higher demonic hierarchy. The Cenobites are often summoned by those who seek to push the boundaries of pleasure, only to be consumed by the horrific consequences of their desires. In both narratives, these beings exploit the dark side of human nature. They show how curiosity, ambition, and desire can pave the road to damnation. The God Hand and the Cenobites are portrayed with disturbing, otherworldly designs. This evokes horror and fascination at the same time. Members of the God Hand have grotesque, inhuman forms, which reflects their twisted nature. The Cenobites are characterized by their mutilated bodies. They are a physical manifestation of the philosophy of pain and pleasure. The horror they evoke lies not just in their appearance, but also in the existential dread they represent. Both groups are reminders of the thin line between humans and monsters, pleasure and pain, and the peril of seeking power beyond one's understanding. Both have an immense impact on the worlds they inhabit. The God Hand's manipulation drives much of the suffering and chaos within the world of Berserk. The Cenobites, while typically operating on a more personal scale, bring about transformation in those who encounter them, often leading to destruction or damnation. And there's another character we need to talk about, the Skull Knight. The Skull Knight serves as a protector and guide to the protagonist's guts, although his true motives and origins remain shrouded in mystery. There are a few points within the story where we get a glimpse of what might be the past of the Skull Knight, but it's only when the group arrives at Skellig that we get a little more information. It is hinted that the Skull Knight was once a human king who suffered a tragic betrayal, leading to his current cursed existence. His role in the story often involves warning gods of impending dangers and intervening in critical moments, but he remains an elusive figure whose full backstory and purpose are gradually revealed as the series progresses. But what we know for sure is that he has a deep grudge against the God Hand, and if it wasn't for him, Guts and Casca wouldn't have survived the eclipse. Now I tried to keep the summary at the beginning of the video as simple as possible, but trust me, it only scratches the surface. I mean, this story is an ongoing series for over 3 decades, so you can imagine how big this world really is. The story found me at the right time. Back then I had a severe mountain bike accident. I rode it downhill when suddenly a pickup appeared and crashed into my left side. I suffered a fractured leg and a necrosis in my left wrist, which basically means the bone is dying. So for a while I had to see a lot of doctors, which can be draining already, but when they tell you that your days in sports are over and you're only 17 of age, you're in a severe downward spiral. So long story short, within that time frame I saw a clip of Berserk of the 1997 anime on YouTube. And today I can admit that I was absolutely desperate. So there was something about the series which caught my attention. I watched the series from 1997 and I picked up the manga. And for a while this story was everything that kept me going. This experience taught me how much influence a fictional story can have on your life. And I'll be forever thankful for it. While Berserk is really a dark story, it also teaches you about human connections, philosophy and hope. It shows that even in a world full of pain, life is worth fighting for. And even in the heart of darkness, there's always a little light. I'd really like to know your connection to this story, because it really feels like that a lot of people find this story when they are going through struggle. So it would be very interesting to know what made you aware of this manga. And well, I guess that's it for today. So see you next time.